So let's talk about the single responsibility principle. This is a very important software development principle that will help you keep your code maintainable because it's going to separate concerns, and that way is going to make your code a lot more reusable. And also is going to help you with the fact that if you change one thing, it's not going to affect another because there's going to be separated. The concerns will be separated out. Let's go ahead and take a look at an example. In this case, I have a simple calculator, and it has 4 methods within it. It says add, subtract, divide, multiply. They all take A, B, and then they just do their operation, perform their operation, whether it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division, and then they also print the value out. Now, I have also instantiated that class, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and print it out after I perform the operation. So I'm going to say add 1 to 2, and then I'm going to say that's that. Let's see what happens. See, it says 3. Yep, just like how we have expected, 1 plus 2 is 3. But what happens if the business comes back and they say, you know what, we actually want to have answer is and then the actual answer, as opposed to just printing out the answer? So yes, you can argue that we can go inside of each method and say, you know what, say answer is, and then just kind of give it a format. So do that, and basically do that for the rest of them. So you do that, and then you say, okay, well, this should, solve the problem. And then you say start, and the answer is 3. Great. It still solves the problem, but here is one thing. What if the business comes back and they say, you know what, now we have certain scenarios, and I'm going to basically demonstrate it by creating a variable scenario equals true. Scenario 1. And in certain scenarios, so in scenario 1, we wanted to say answer is and then the value. And then on other scenarios, doesn't matter if it's scenario 2 or 3 or anything else, we don't want it to say it. We just want it to show the value. You say, okay, well, that's a little bit of a problem because right now, the way I show my answer happens, it's glued together. My calculation of the value and my display logic, the way I want to display my answer, is glued together. So there's 2 responsibilities. One responsibility is we're calculating the value, which is what the simple calculator should do, and then it's also responsible for how to display this value. So you see that we have combined 2 responsibilities. The class is not responsible for only one thing. It's responsible for 2 things, which is actually pretty bad. And we have violated the single responsibility principle by doing that. So what we can do, if we haven't still realized that we have violated that principle, we can still say, oh, you know what, I don't want to change my class. I'm just going to take this out. The answer is, I'm going to take it out, and I'm going to bring it here, and I'm going to say the following. If the scenario 1 is happening, then I'm going to say, let's bring it back. I'm going to say console write, and then I'm going to say answer is, then I'm going to actually calculate and display my answer. And if it's not scenario 1, then I'm just going to, just calculate and show my answer. Now, yes, this will work. However, this is very hacky because you are basically dividing up the display logic. Half of the display logic is outside of the method, half of the display logic is inside of the method, and then you are basically just, doing that together. So you always have to remember that you have to do these together when scenario 1, and you then do that separately in here. still you're violating the single responsibility principle. So if you have more complex business requirements where, let's say for addition, you want to display it differently, for subtraction, you want to display it separately, right? There's like different ways in which you want to display it. You're going to have to do this thing here where you're separating out half the display logic outside, half of it is inside. It's not clean code. And if you actually do this, other developers will look down on you because this is not very good practice. You are introducing many possible bugs. This is a very simple example. If in a larger scheme of things, you start separating these responsibilities and having half of it outside of the class, half of it inside the class, and then still mix responsibilities within a class, that will cause so many bugs, and your software will not be maintainable and it will not be flexible. When you're trying to reuse components, it will not happen, because right now we can't reuse our add method because it has basically the calculation and the display within it. So the one way in which we can separate it out, right, in this case, is we say, hey, listen, simple calculator, you only calculate the value. I'll take care of the logic outside. Don't worry about that. So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to say return AB, and that has int, right? So this one has int as well. Double, in this case, just so we can get the fraction back. We're going to say return AB. We're going to say return minus a minus b rather, and then return a times b, right? So there you go. Now we're only calculating and returning the value back. But when we want to actually print it out, we're going to say, hey, listen, this is the display logic, and we can also have another class that takes care of the display logic. So we're separating it within two classes, right? And then in here we're saying console write, or rather write line in this case, because it's going to write the whole thing out, and write line, and that's it. So now we have separated our calculation and our display logic. This is calculating the value, giving you a value back, and then you do whatever you want with it. You can display it like this, you can display it in a different way, you can take this console write line and put it in another class. You can have different formatting in which you specify for each scenario, for each operation. It's all up to you. So it is very decoupled. It's very separate from one another. So it's almost like Legos, right? You don't have two pieces together. It's like separate pieces, and you put those separate pieces together in whichever way you want, in whichever your requirements are. And that's the beauty of the single responsibility principle. In this case, we are now following the single responsibility principle, and that is good, and that's what we should do whenever we're writing our software.